we have already had the first level of classification of states, namely into recurrent and transient states. That of course gives us some picture. However, to get a much better, clearer picture of how the Markov chain evolves in the long run, we have to go at a next level of decomposition, which is basically a finer decomposition of the state space, not just into recurrent and transient states. To be very specific, we will get a further decomposition of recurrent states into certain classes, which would turn out to be what are called closed irreducible classes. And it comes from introduction of a very important binary relation between the states, namely that of leads to. A natural question to ask is, does every Markov chain have to have states of both types? That means every Markov chain has some states which are recurrent, some states which are transient. The answer is of course no. And we'll see examples. So a Markov chain can sometimes have all its states to be one type only. Namely, either all states are recurrent or all states are transient. Such examples are possible, and we'll see such examples. So this is a general scenario. However, the second contingency, that is all states being transient, is not possible if the state space S is finite. In other words, if a Markov chain has a finite state space, then it has to have at least one recurrent state. And that is going to turn out to be a very, very important and useful fact when we go to further analysis of Markov chains. So every finite state space Markov chain has to have at least one recurrent state. So only Markov chains in which all states could be transient are Markov chains with infinite state space. What's the reason? Here's a heuristic argument. Later on, of course, we'll see a proper proof. Suppose you have a Markov chain with d many states, finite, d many states. Let it start from any state. Now denote the number of visits to the d states by n1 etc. up to nd. These are of course random. Now what we do know is that if all the d states are transient, then this number of visits n1, n2 etc. nd have to be all finite with probability 1. And therefore, if I take the sum of these d many finite random variables, their sum is also going to be finite with probability 1. Now the big problem is, what does the chain do after the random finite time n1 plus n2 plus etc. nd elapses? See, the question now is, by the time that this time elapses, the Markov chain has finished its quota of visits to state 1, state 2, etc. state d. So after that time elapses, which is a finite time, the Markov chain has nowhere to go to. So this is basically something that cannot happen. Of course, this is only heuristic. So this is happening, this absurd scenario is arising because we are assuming that all states are transient. So this suggests that it's not possible for all states to be transient. But of course, this is only heuristics. A formal proof follows. So here's a proposition: an MC with a finite state space has to have at least one recurrent state. The formal proof is very simple. Fix any S in X in S. Now, from the very definition of Pxyn, it is clear that for every n greater than or equal to 1, if I take Pxyn, X is fixed, sum these quantities over all Y in S, that sum has to be 1, because after all, these are just conditional probabilities of Xn being equal to Y given X0 equal to X. So if you vary Y, these conditional probabilities add up to 1. Now if I take the limit as n goes to infinity, since for every n this sum is 1, as n goes to infinity the limit of the sum also has to be 1. There's no problem about that. But now I bring in the assumption of state space S being finite. Since the state space is finite, I can interchange the limit and the sum. That is, I can bring the limit inside the sum if the state space is finite. That means if the sum is a finite sum. So we would have summation y in S, then limit n going to infinity pxy super n is 1. However, if all the states are transient, if that was possible, then we already know that limit n going to infinity pxy super n is 0 for every y. That's the result that we have proved already. And that of course gives a contradiction. Each limit in the sum, inside the sum is 0, but the sum has to be 1. That's clearly a contradiction. Now, so therefore, it's not possible that all states are transient. Now, important thing to note here is that S being finite is crucial for the argument, because otherwise we could not have brought the limit inside the sum. So this completes the proof that any Markov chain with finite state space has to have at least one recurrent state. So now we go towards decomposition of the state space. Let's write the state space S as a union of recurrent states and transient states. So SR is the notation for recurrent states and ST for transient states. What we do is we now proceed towards a finer decomposition of the part SR, the recurrent state part. For that, we need to make one more definition. For states x, y in S, and again I repeat, these are not necessarily distinct. We say that x leads to y, and in notation we'll write it that way, if rho xy is positive. What it really means is that given that the chain starts from x, so x leads to y, what does it mean? It means given that the chain starts at x, there is a positive probability of visiting y at some time greater than or equal to 1. Now, it's not so difficult, fairly easy to see that x leads to y is equivalent to rho xy super n positive for some n greater than or equal to 1, which is equivalent to rho xy super n positive for some n greater than or equal to 1. Now, one should try this as an exercise, but let's quickly see. The first equivalence is immediate. By definition, x leads to y means rho xy is positive. But recall, rho xy always is a sum of rho xy n over all n. So if the sum rho xy is to be positive, that is equivalent to saying at least one rho xy n has to be positive. So the first equivalence is immediate. Look at the second equivalence. Well, one direction is trivial because rho xy super n positive for some n would imply that pxy super n has to be positive for that n itself, because pxy super n is always greater than or equal to rho xy super n, as already seen. What requires a little bit of work is the other way around. That is, if pxy super n is positive for some n greater than or equal to 1, show that then rho xy super n has to be positive for some n greater than or equal to 1. I think you should try that as an exercise. Now, going back to this relation, x leads to y, it's easy to see from Chapman-Kolmogorov equation that x leads to y and y leads to z implies that x leads to z. I mean, probabilistically it should be clear if it's possible to go from x to y with positive probability in finite time. It's possible to go from y to z with positive probability in finite time, then it should be possible to go from x to z with positive probability in finite time. But you should actually, proof of that would be involved using the fact that if x leads to y means pxy n1 is positive for some n1 greater than or equal to 1. Y leads to z implies that pyz n2 is greater than 0, positive for some n2 greater than or equal to 1. And then use Chapman-Kolmogorov to conclude that pzx n1 plus n2 has to be positive for n1 plus n2 would do. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that the relation leads to is a transitive relation. X leads to y, y leads to z implies x leads to z. Is it an equivalence relation? Well, may not be an equivalence relation on S, on the full state space. However, what is going to be very, very important, extremely important, is something that will show, restrict this relation to SR, set of recurrent states. There, it turns out to be indeed an equivalence relation. And that would come as a consequence of this very, very important theorem, which has other implications also. So the theorem says that suppose x is a recurrent state and suppose x leads to y, then first of all y must be recurrent, and not only that, in this case rho xy as well as rho yx both have to be equal to 1. Notice that x leads to y would have only meant that rho xy is positive. But the conclusion is, if x is recurrent and x leads to y, then rho xy has to be actually equal to 1. And not only rho xy, rho yx also has to be equal to 1. So here's the proof. Clearly there is nothing to prove is y equal to x. If y equal to x, then of course it's trivially true. If x is recurrent, then y is recurrent. So assume that y is different from x. So there are three things to be proved, namely that y is recurrent, namely that rho xy equal to 1 and rho yx equal to 1. We'll first actually show the last fact, that is rho yx equal to 1. And we do this by contradiction. We assume that rho yx less than 1, if possible, strictly less than 1, and get a contradiction. Okay, so what does rho yx less than 1 mean? That means that, remember the definition, the px probability that ty is finite is less than 1. By going to the complement, that would mean the px probability that ty is infinity is positive. And that's exactly what is written here. Conditioned on y, the probability that xn is not equal to x for all n greater than or equal to 1 is strictly positive. That is, conditioned on starting from y, Tx is infinity is positive. So this is what we get if we assume that rho yx is less than 1. Suppose now that somehow from the hypothesis of the theorem, we can find some n naught greater than or equal to 1 such that this is true. The px probability that x n naught is y, but xn for any n less than or equal to n naught minus 1 is not x. Suppose that probability is positive. Suppose we are able to get such an n naught. We will see how to get such an n naught later, but suppose for the time being that we can find such an n naught using the hypothesis of the theorem. Then, by Markov property, we would get the following. Look at this event. Px probability of the event that xn is not equal to x for n less than or n naught minus 1, xn not equal to y, and xn naught plus n is not equal to x for all n greater than or equal to 1. Let's look at the px probability of this. Remember, px probability means it's a conditional probability given x not equal to x. Again, using appropriate properties of conditional probability from among the list of properties that was already given before, one would get, and of course using Markov property also, one would get that this conditional probability can be factored into these two factors, can be written as a product of these two factors. And that is positive because the second one is positive because we assumed rho yx is less than 1. And the first one is positive. We are assuming that we can get such an n naught. So this is positive. But remember that the event on the left hand side implies the event that xn is not equal to x for all n greater than or equal to 1. Because this event on the left hand side is xn is not equal to x up to n naught minus 1. Then at n naught it's y, which is not equal to x. And after n naught, namely xn naught plus n, is also not equal to x for all n greater than or equal to 1. Okay. Suppose now that from the hypothesis of the theorem, that is whatever is given, we are able to find some n naught greater than or equal to 1 such that px probability that xn not equal to y, but xn is not equal to x for up to n less than or n naught minus 1. Suppose we are able to find such an n naught so that this probability is positive. Then by Markov property, you would get the following. If you look at this probability, px probability that firstly xn not equal to x for n less than or equal to n naught minus 1, xn not equal to y, and xn naught plus n is not x for all n greater than or equal to 1, the px probability of that by using properties of conditional probability and Markov property, one can show that turns out to be exactly this. So Markov property has been used for the second factor, getting the second factor. Now, this right hand side is positive. Why? Because both factors are positive. The second factor is positive because we assumed rho yx is less than 1. And the first factor, we assume that we can get such an n naught such that the first factor is positive. And therefore, the right hand side is positive, which means the probability on the left hand side is positive. But now, if you look at the event on the left hand side, this implies the event that xn is not equal to x for all n greater than or equal to 1, because the event says that xn is not, event on the left hand side says xn is not x up to n naught minus 1. At n naught, xn naught is y, which is again not x, distinct from x, and then xn naught plus n is also not equal to x for all n greater than or equal to 1. So that certainly implies that xn is not x for all n greater than or equal to 1. But already the event on the left hand side has px probability positive, which would mean that px probability of this event, xn not equal to x for all n greater than or equal to 1, has to be also positive. That contradicts the hypothesis that x is recurrent, because if x is recurrent, this cannot happen. Starting from x is never visited, that probability cannot be positive, that probability has to be 0 because x is recurrent. So the only thing that needs to, so this would give us a contradiction, provided of course we are able to show that using the hypothesis we can get an n naught satisfying that desired property. So how to get n naught as above? Now the hypothesis that we are going to use is x leads to y. We know that implies that pxy super n is positive for some n greater than or equal to 1. Choose n naught to be the smallest such integer n greater than or equal to 1 such that this is true. Rho xy n is positive. Then one can show, and I want you to think of this as an exercise, take it as an exercise, that you can find states x1, x2, xn naught minus 1, n naught minus 1 many states, all of them different from x, such that the Px probability that x1 is x1, etc., xn naught minus 1 equal to xn naught minus 1 and xn naught equal to y is positive. So here the fact that Pxy n naught is positive is important, but equally important is the fact that n naught is the smallest n such that this is true. So from these two you should be able to get this. Now with this n naught, clearly what we have is what we wanted, that xn naught is y and xn naught is not equal to x for all n less than n naught minus 1. That has to be positive because we could choose x1, x2, x2, etc., xn naught minus 1 to be all different from x. So thus we have completed the proof of rho yx equal to 1. The next thing we will show is that y is recurrent. Okay. Choose integers n1 and n2 such that pyx n1 is positive, pxy n2 is positive. The first one we can do because we have already shown that rho yx is 1, which means y leads to x. So the first one is positive. First one is possible. The second one, because of the hypothesis that x leads to y, so there is such an n2. So we can get such n1 and n2. Now from the Chapman-Kolmogorov equations, you can easily see that pyy in so many steps, n1 plus n plus n2 many steps, that probability of going from y to y in n1 plus n plus n2 many steps is greater than or equal to the probability of going from y to x in n1 steps, then probability of going from x to x in n steps, and then going from x to y is n2 steps. I mean, you can actually see it probabilistically also easily. So this is true. This inequality holds for every n greater than or equal to 1. Add both sides over n. You get this inequality. Notice that the factors pyx super n1 and pxy super n2, they don't depend on n on the right hand side, so they come out. Now, since x is given to be recurrent, we know that this series diverges. If this series diverges, then the right hand side, if you look at the right hand side, you have the series and then it's multiplied by two factors which are both strictly positive. That's how we have chosen them to be. So the right hand side would be would be infinite, which means the left hand side, which is greater than or equal to right hand side, also has to be infinite. But if you look at the left hand side, it is just part of total sum of pyy super n over all n possible n. So therefore that series also has to diverge, which proves that y is recurrent. So we have proved two parts. We have proved rho yx is 1, y is recurrent. Now to prove that rho xy is 1, you simply have to reverse the roles of x and y, because now that we already know that y is recurrent and y leads to x, just the way we proved rho yx is equal to 1, it follows now that rho xy also has to be 1. So that completes the proof. What does this theorem tell us? Suppose we know that x is a recurrent state and y is another state such that x leads to y. Immediate fallout is that y must be recurrent. In other words, a recurrent state cannot lead to a transient state. But not only that, one also has that in this case, y also leads to x, which gives us the reflexivity of the relationship on SR. In fact, one has not just the rho xy and rho yx to be positive, they are all actually equal to 1, which is much more than what is required for x leading to y or y leading to x. So to summarize, if x is recurrent and y merely know that rho xy is positive, then we can conclude not only that y is recurrent, but also that rho xy is 1 and also rho yx is 1. You must realize that what this actually means is that in this case, the chain starting from x will with probability 1 visit y, not just once, not just twice, an infinite number of times with probability 1 and vice versa. So one of the upshots of the findings, as we already saw, is that this relation is an equivalence relation when restricted to SR, reflexive, symmetric, and transitive. So can be partitioned, we can partition SR into disjoint equivalence classes, where the CI are closed and irreducible classes. They are really equivalence classes. It's closed because for I not in J, I not equal to J, states of CI do not lead to states of CJ, because the CJs are equivalence classes under that relation. That same thing as saying that Pxy is 0 for every x in Ci and y in Cj, I not equal to j, left as an exercise. Irreducible, in any Ci, every state x in Ci leads to every other state y in Ci. Thus, we have a final decomposition of the state space S, which is given by this. Now with this, let's see how this decomposition gives us a complete story of the life of a chain, which is interesting to understand. So we are going to describe what the above decomposition tells us about the evolution of the Markov chain, or which you can life story of a chain. If the chain originates, so think of these CIs as little islands, and then ST is a big continent. If the chain originates from one of the CIs, that is one of the little islands, then it remains within the CI forever, visiting each state within that class infinitely many times with probability 1. But it remains there forever. For that chain, CI is the only land it knows. On the other hand, if the chain starts in ST, that is a big continent, then there are two possible contingencies, both of which may happen. One contingency is that the chain remains within ST forever, but then it can visit each state only a finite random number of times with probability 1. Clearly, this contingency is not possible if ST is finite, because you can't spend the entire life visiting only a finite number of possible states, each a finite number of times. So, this first contingency is not possible if ST is finite. The other contingency is that the chain remains within ST for a finite random period of time, and then it moves to one of the islands, one of these CIs. Which CI? Again, it's random. After which it remains within CI, so once it lands in CI, it forgets the past, pretends as if it originated from CI, which means that it stays within CI forever, behaving exactly like a chain originating in that class. Okay, to conclude, what we have just seen is that we have introduced the notion of one state leading to a state, and then we have seen that on the state of recurrent states, that becomes an equivalence relation, and once we have that, that means that all the recurrent states can then be broken up into equivalence classes. And what does it say about Markov chains? It actually gives us a complete picture, a complete understanding of how a Markov chain evolves through its entire life, depending on where it starts. To be precise, if it starts in one of the closed irreducible classes of recurrent states, then it remains there forever. Whereas if it starts in one of the transient states, then there are two possibilities. Either it remains there forever, or perhaps after some random finite amount of time, it moves into one of the closed irreducible recurrent classes and then lives there forever. We will do further analysis in our subsequent discussions.